there are a lot of great fathers out there, in black families, that are in the community. There are fathers to many kids. You know what I mean? Especially like in the inner city.
Yeah.
Like, just like a mother in a neighborhood would be a mom to multiple kids, to the whole neighborhood. There's fathers that's there in the neighborhoods that are fathers to multiple kids to help guide them, in a positive light, in a positive manner. Even with me growing up to be a father, I can recall this one time I was in the airport, and me and my son was traveling from Chicago to South Carolina, leaving the O'Hare airport, and this guy walks up to me. He's like, "Man, it's really good to see you." A Caucasian guy was like, "It's really good to see you with your son." And I kind of looked at him. He's like, "I write books. I'm a comic writer." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm gonna write a story about you." I'm like, "A story about me?" He's like, "Yeah, about you and your son." And he, smiled and walked off. I'm like, "What the?" Like, I like, "What the?" But on that same flight, when I made it to Augusta, Georgia, my destination, I get off the airplane and there's this black lady, and she's an older lady, and she stops me. She's like, "Hey," I'm like, "Hey," and she's like, "It's really good to see you with your son." And I'm like, "It is?" She's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "How old is he?" And I kind of told him he's 3, 2. And she's like, "Man, it's really good to see you." And I stopped and I got offended. I literally got offended thinking about what happened today. One, a Caucasian guy stopped me in, Chicago, and then an African American woman stopped me in Augusta, Georgia, to compliment me on the same thing of being a father. Like, I'm just doing my job. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
You're doing what you're
I don't
supposed
need no
to.
praise. I got offended because they were giving me praise.
Right.
Am I crazy with that?
No, you're not. You're not. You're not crazy for it, but that tells us that there's not enough fathers or men in this world doing what they should be doing. And I think we talked about the accountable piece, holding people accountable,
Yeah.
holding each other accountable.
Yeah.
That's where we need to start holding, our friends,
Yeah.
starting smalls, holding our friends accountable for things like that.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a tough subject. And even in the process of doing that, on that same flight, one of the ladies, I mean, from what it sounds like, I may not know what I'm doing as a father, because one of the ladies stopped me and she was like, flight attendant. She's like, "Hey, he is so quiet. He ain't making no noise." I was like, "Yeah, he doesn't. This is how he is."
Right.
And she's like, "Let me hold him for a second." She just grabbed him. She just literally grabbed my son. And I was like, "Wait, what?" Like, you don't. And I feel like the motherly aspect of her was basically saying, because she was an older lady, she was basically saying, like, "I'm a mother. I know what it takes to do whatever it takes, or I have this loving aspect of me, and I'm a nurturing person, and here, let me, nurture your kid."
Was she doing that, you think, because you were traveling, like, as a single father, I guess?
I think part of that, yes. Like, all of that together.
Right.
But it wasn't that I wasn't doing what I was, like, my son was amazing. Like,
Of course.
He's with me, he's quiet, he's,
Jackson.
But when she did that, every bell and whistle went off in my head. Like, you just don't randomly grab
No.
somebody's kid, whether he's just a man.
Right.
Because in my mind, if I had a woman there with me, my wife or girlfriend or whatever there with me, she would have never touched our kid.
No, she wouldn't have. But to look at it in a different way, she was just offering a different perspective.
She was.
Of
But
that,
it was so offensive.
A perspective that, as men, we don't have.
Right.
To me, the thing, though, that stands out is, that, and I'm sure that's maybe not even happened. Maybe it has happened again, maybe it hasn't, and it hasn't. But think about all the eyes and judgment that goes on quietly.
Yeah.
It's consistent. So I bet you encounter that every day that you're with your son.
Yeah.
And it's like how, like you said, we got to hold other men accountable for being present in their child's life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, even walking, the other day when I tell you I saw that kid walking on the outside, father on the inside, it made me feel good. The fact that it was a father-son, bonding moment that was happening. And I even catch myself walking throughout the city when I see a dad, and I got to be honest, Jay, and with the viewers, to see a white dad and his kid, a Caucasian guy with his kid, or Hispanic, Mexican, Cuban, whatever, their kid, no bells and whistles goes off. But
No.
the moment that I see an African American dad with his kid, I'm like, kind of like the old lady and the white male.
Right.
I'm like, I take notice. I'm like, nice.
To me, I'm thinking
Nice.
this though. Are you guys seeing it as like, you're like, well, at least, he's trying to break the cycle that I grew up with, and saying like, your bells and whistles are going off because your father wasn't present.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like thank God that somebody's out there breaking the cycle.
That kid isn't going to experience what
But
I have.
But the question is how do we push, because that should be normal. That should be a normal thing to expect a black man with his son.
Right.
But like you said, Thomas, it's about holding our our brothers accountable.
Right. And I think it is normal that black men are with their sons. But I think as men, and not black or white, but as men, period, we always talk about our failures and not our successes.
Yeah.
It's easier for us to see the failures. The successes that we have is hard. I'm not going to say it's harder to see, but it's expected.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't celebrate those successes as much as we should.
And I think also a lot of television shows, movies, they don't display their black men being there, being black fathers to the black kids.
Right.
It's always like a stepdad or it's a comedian dad. Like back in the day when we had the Cosby Show or Good Times.
Right.
James and Heathcliff Huxtable was always there, telling their kids to do the right thing. But nowadays, it's more like comedians that's in that spot or the women are in more of the main roles. And even when it comes to music and rap, which is what a lot of our youth listens to, you see more pictures of Lil Wayne by himself than being with his two kids, and or these rappers with their, and Kanye was one of them that you see more pictures of Kanye without his kids than with his kids. And I think that we have to flip the script. So that becomes more of a norm than something like a unicorn. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things too is, we're sitting here talking about that. A lot of that goes back to failures and success, and being successful with being a father. We have to realize, I'll say I have to realize, as being a father, that's a growth process.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I may not get something right today, but next month I have an opportunity to get it right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of parents get offended when their kid tries to correct them, because it's not from the position of a kid. It should be correcting the parent. A parent supposed to correct the kid, but as parents, we're not perfect. We don't get it right all the time. We really don't. And one point that you talked about was there is a difference between a man and a father.
Right.
You can be a success as a man in the rapper or at your job or having all these accolades, and you can fail as a father, in that same household.
Yeah.
And you can succeed as a husband and fail as a father.
Right.
So there is a differentiation between the two positions, but I think in society, we as men, we are succeeding as black men, and I think that there's some catching up that we have to do as black fathers.
From the perception, though, of men judging other men, it's like you said, Thomas, that we see we like to comment on the failures because it's so easy to comment on the failures. Think about it as simple as just like an Instagram post. Somebody posts something super corny, you see a ton of comments.
Right.
But if somebody posts, that they just graduated from a university and they're holding their degree, 2 comments.
Right.
And so it's like that same thing exists where we're awarding men for these, I want to call it toxic traits, and we're calling that success, but we're not calling out the failures. It's like a reverse. But we're calling out the failures when men don't hold up to what a man is,
Or their version of it.
Yeah, or their version.
Case in point, when I saw you the guy, back to the example, the guy walking the kid.
Right.
Automatically, I looked at him and I said, he's doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The kid is on the outside, he's doing it wrong. Instead of saying, you know what? Bravo. kudos.
Yeah.
There's a man with his father.
Yeah,
you know the
kid
fact.
with his father.
In my mind, a car was gonna come out and hit the kid. And
Right.
It had nothing to do with a car. It was
Right.
no other cars on the street, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
super early in the morning.
Right.
But the fact that I looked at the negative in that scenario before the positive is exactly what you're touching on.
Yeah.
And even go back to look at the stewardess
Yeah.
that picked up Jackson.
Yeah.
You know, she's looking at it from a mother's point,
Mm-hmm.
a grandmother's point.
Yeah.
You know, and she might have seen something in Jackson at that moment that made her feel that he needed that.
Yeah.
Because as a father, as a man, we're not going to see that.
Mm.
We definitely don't see those type of things, you know, and that's why I say it's a learning process. It's a growth
There it
process. So, one of the things that I did want to talk about as being a father and how a man, how it's hard for us to show emotions and to show certain feelings towards our kids, towards our significant others, our girlfriends, our friends, you know. Example, I've never told you I love you. I've never hugged you. You know what I mean? And if I did, you would probably look at me like,
That makes me uncomfortable.
Right.
You even mention it. You see me saying like,
right. But deep down, you know that there is,
yeah, that's what this
There's
means.
a-
Like,
right,
like I
right.
love you, man.
Right,
We gotta
exactly.
say it, but
right, but there's a
Obama
factor
bump.
of love there,
Yeah.
you know? And
understood.
as men, we just feel so uncomfortable
Yeah.
doing that. But why?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask you, why do you feel uncomfortable? Why did that make you feel uncomfortable when I said that?
Because you're a man.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest. If your wife, if I was at your house and y'all cooking, your wife be like, hey, you know, Tarrance, I love you.
Right.
I'd be like, I love you too. Wouldn't even think about it.
Right.
You know, like that's what family do. But the fact that you be like, you know, I love you, I nod. All right, man. But it's uncharted territory,
Yeah.
to be honest. And it would take some time to do. And I gotta be honest with you, moving here to Chicago, working with the bishop, Spencer Jones, and in the beginning, he would always hug me. Hey, I love you.
Right.
And he would hug me, like literally hug me, and like I love you. And my hands used to be out to the side, like this dude,
Right.
you know. And then eventually, I grew into actually hugging him and telling him I love him, to the point that when I go places, to be honest with you, I tell other kids, random kids,
Yeah.
you know, like, hey, I love you, because they may not have heard those words
Right.
from another man or from anybody.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's funny because we go into what I call a mode of protecting, and we go into a mode of that providing mode. Those are our natural instincts, you know. I'll share when I had my brain surgery last year, September. I had a brain surgery. And when I first found out that I had a tumor, I immediately went into my family and thinking, okay, so how do I protect them from what I'm about to go through?
Mm-hmm.
And not really thinking about my emotions and what I needed to
Exactly,
feel
yeah.
and to go through that. To the point, even when I was talking to you about it, I said, man, look, I want to sit down, I want to tape something
Yeah.
for my family, you know, and I'm thinking about them and not thinking about my emotional state. So at one point, me and my wife was talking about it, and I said, you know what? I said, I'm fine, you know, with whatever happens. It was before I knew it wasn't a cancerous tumor.
Yeah.
You know, I'm fine with whatever's happening. We have this financial in place, this, and that, you know, just laying out the plan, and, you know, and the kids, and I want to make sure this, and that. And she said, wait a minute, how could you be fine with that? You know, I said, what do you mean, how can I be fine with it? She said, yeah, you're talking about the worst case scenario, if that happens,
Yeah.
you're fine with it. She's like, I'm not fine with it. You know, your kids are not fine with it. So how could you be fine with it? And I was like, huh, you know, you're right. But that was me going into
Yeah.
that protecting mode, trying to protect everybody else.
And the sad thing that I think of is a lot of men don't have their wife or woman or friend to
be
tell
able to
them
say,
that, to check them like
Yeah.
that, to say. And that's a dangerous thing to walk around with inner demons, I guess, not that they were demons, but scary thoughts
Right.
about yourself that you're just letting settle, letting take,
Yeah.
burying almost.
Right.
Because you think about, provide, you think about being tough, you think about all those things, and that can be dangerous because a lot of men that don't have somebody to check them, it leads to either self-harm or it leads to harming others.
Yeah.
And because then people, could be as someone takes too long at, in line or something, and then they flip you off, but it's because you have unchecked trauma or unchecked emotions.
Yeah. I agree, and I will say that one of the biggest things that I learned from that is that the people around me have to see that version of me too.
Yeah.
It's important for them to see that version of me too, because prior to that, my kids had never seen me cry. My wife had seen it in limited forms from another tragedy. Someone passing in the family or something like that. But my kids had never seen that form of their father. And that made them realize that, all right, he's human. And it's okay for me as the child, for me to cry about that and to let my emotions go about that.
Mm-hmm.
When I was telling you about it, we were sitting in a room and I was holding back tears, cracking jokes to keep from crying, because it's not cool for me to let my friend, another man,
Of course.
see me cry.
And that's the other men holding other men captive.
Yeah.
In this, when being sad, crying, it's just another emotion as being happy, as being excited, as anything else.
Yeah.
Anger, it's one of your emotions that exists inside of you.
Right.
And we're continuously avoiding that. And when it's just, you gotta be yourself. You gotta be you.
And honestly, I think it starts from a father to a son saying I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep kissing and hugging and saying I love you, to make those uncomfortable moments comfortable.
Yeah.
And communication is developed in those processes. And I think communication is key, because as one of the things I know as a black man, we talk about the struggles and we talk about the weight of the world and depression and the things that we're dealing with. But can you imagine if we had that partner or somebody that we could communicate to? Even though there's outlets all around us, we hold it in, like you're saying, and we're holding each other hostage of our own scenarios and situations. Case in point, like you said, you could have boo-hooed in that room. It would have been so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'd have been looking at you like, I don't know what to do. Like, should I hug him? Like, should I get him some tissue? And I'm like, does he expect me to cry? Because I can't cry. Like, two grown men in the room crying and somebody walking by looking like, what's going on? Right.
Yeah.
So, but you should be able to let that outlet out. And I should be able to, sit and cry with you as though women do, or, like family members or loved ones. And even you mentioned earlier that your wife saw you cry. It probably was a manly cry. You probably didn't let go and be completely like snot and all the other stuff.
This was.
So y'all got an amazing relationship.
Wiping my nose with
Yeah.
Grabbing her shirt, wiping your nose.
But that's part of
that's
life.
amazing.
That is how you heal.
Yeah.
Like that is literally how you heal, because it expressing, and especially around someone you love so much,
Right.
or even just a very close friend that's grown with you. I've had friends over 10 years. I'm sure you'll both have had friends over decades too.
Yeah.
It's okay to let those out, and that's part of the healing process. That's part of expressing all of your emotions.
Yeah.
If you don't, it's a dangerous game to play.
Yeah.
It is.
I think that we touched on a lot of amazing topics here today, from Jay and his upbringing to me and my upbringing and yours, and fatherhood in general. I understand that one day Jay's gonna be a father, and I think you're gonna be an amazing father.
Appreciate it.
With the template that you have, along with me, and the ability to adjust, to change, and learn, and understand. And be honest with you, Thomas is one of my mentors when it comes to fatherhood. And talking with Thomas, he lets me put out my grievances or whatever, and then he'll allow me to take a deep breath, and then he'll hand it back to me. And he'll like, this is a different perspective that I need you to take in and look. And a lot of times, I'll call Thomas back later on that day. I'm like, dude, it worked. Like we're talking about some of the negative things of not having our father there, is the hug, the lack thereof of hug from our kids.
Right.
And I went home that night and I hugged Jackson. And before, Jackson always hugs me, and I tickle him and we say our prayers together and I kiss him, tell him good night. But the hug is limited. It's like, all right, 1, 2, 3, okay.
Right.
1, 2, 3, okay.
Right.
But after me, you had that talk, I really just let him hold me until he felt like he wanted to let go.
Right.
Which was, a new territory for me and new feelings, and it was awkward. I'm gonna be honest with you, but it's something awkwardness that I can get used to.
Right.
But even with you being here, giving us some insight and wisdom into what it takes, and even being transparent to let us know that you don't have all the answers.
Right. Yeah.
My stomach is full from this conversation. I think that it's amazing, and I think that you guys all touched on some amazing points. What I want to do is this, to the viewers that watch it, comment below. Let us know what you think about it. If you have topics that you want us to talk about, or topics that we should talk about in the future, we'll do another session and we'll talk about, more men, or either bring other people on. What would you like to see at this table? But I think that today we kind of opened up our hearts, transparency, vulnerability, and we talked about some scenarios that real men, real fathers go through on a day-to-day basis with their kids, whether it's a daughter or a son, whether it's an older kid or a younger kid. And in some senses, we talked about us being a father, but also us being the kid.
Yeah.
So you have so many intricacies here, dynamics that is unspoken and spoken of. So we would definitely love to hear back from you, what you think about it. And again, thank you guys for coming on Face to Face with Tarrance Weaver, and we hope that you enjoy. God bless. Thank you.